This is Heliox, where evidence meets empathy. Independent, moderated, timely, deep, gentle, clinical, global, and community conversations about things that matter. Breathe easy, we go deep and lightly surface the big ideas.
Welcome to our deep dive on food insecurity in Toronto. We got a lot to cover today.
Yeah.
Reports from the city, Daily Bread Food Bank, and even some academic research. Looks like we'll be exploring just how widespread this issue is in the city, what's causing it, and what some potential solutions might be. Where should we start?
Well, I think before we jump into the numbers, it's important to make sure we're all on the same page about what food insecurity actually means. The City of Toronto defines it as not having enough money to reliably get the food you need.
So it's more than just not having enough food, it's about the financial struggle to consistently get it.
Right, and that's why it's so important to understand that food is a human right. Everyone deserves access to safe, affordable, and culturally appropriate food without having to compromise other essential needs.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And you provided this statistic that 1 in 4 households in Toronto are facing food insecurity. 1 in 4. That's shocking. Daily Bread Food Bank is even calling it an unprecedented hunger crisis.
Yeah, I mean, it's a staggering number, and those numbers are incredibly alarming. And it's not just about empty stomachs. Food insecurity has a ripple effect on every aspect of a person's life.
Well, yeah, I mean, it makes sense that if someone's constantly worried about where their next meal is coming from, it would take a toll on their mental health.
Absolutely. That University of Hawaii research you sent over found a direct link between food insecurity and things like depression and anxiety, even suicidal thoughts.
Wow.
So when you consider that 1 in 4 households in Toronto are facing this, it paints a really bleak picture.
Yeah, it's heartbreaking. And from the reports, it seems, the people most affected are those already facing systemic disadvantages. Did you notice any particular patterns in those most at risk?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
The City of Toronto's report points to some clear trends. People living on low incomes, those relying on social assistance programs like Ontario Works or ODSP, individuals with disabilities, renters, lone parent families, and Black and Indigenous communities are all disproportionately affected by food insecurity.
So we're not just talking about a lack of food, we're talking about systemic issues like poverty, racism, and inadequate social support systems.
Exactly. These factors create significant barriers to accessing affordable housing, secure employment, and sufficient income, pushing these communities further into food insecurity.
And of course, this is all happening in Toronto, which is a notoriously expensive city. The report mentioned a nutritious food basket. What is that exactly?
Oh, it's a tool the City of Toronto uses to track the cost of a healthy diet. In 2023, this basket cost a family of $1,177 per month.
Wow. That's a lot of money. I can only imagine how difficult it would be for a low-income family to afford that on top of rent, transportation, and all the other essential expenses.
Yeah, for sure. The report actually gave some specific examples. A family of 4 receiving Ontario Works might need an additional $4,000 per month just to cover all their basic needs, including that food basket. And for a couple on ODSP, they might only have $165 left over after covering essentials like rent, transportation, and food.
That's barely enough to get by, let alone thrive. It makes relying on food banks seem almost inevitable in these situations.
Yeah, food banks definitely play a crucial role in providing immediate relief. But you're right, they're not a long-term solution.
All the reports we have seem to agree on that.
Right. It's important to remember that food banks emerged as a temporary response to the recession in the 80s. They were never meant to become the primary solution to hunger.
So if food banks are just a Band-Aid solution, what are some more sustainable ways to address food insecurity in Toronto? What are the experts suggesting?
Well, the City of Toronto is advocating for what they call a multi-pronged approach that focuses on income security. They're calling for a combination of affordable housing, accessible transportation, affordable childcare secure jobs with living wages and benefits and social assistance programs that adequately cover the real cost of living.
So they're trying to tackle this problem from all sides.
Yeah, they are. And it's encouraging to see that they're taking this seriously. But the question remains, how will all this translate into real action? You know, it's interesting to see how the City of Toronto is trying to weave this sense of urgency about food insecurity into all of their existing plans and initiatives.
You're right. In part 1, we touched on how the City of Toronto has declared food insecurity an emergency. They've also integrated this declaration into initiatives like the Poverty Reduction Strategy, the Food Charter, and the School Food Program. Can you give us some concrete examples of what those initiatives actually look like in action?
Absolutely. One example that stands out is the Black Food Sovereignty Plan. It aims to address the deep-rooted inequities within Toronto's food system that disproportionately impact Black communities.
So it's acknowledging that systemic racism plays a role in food insecurity
Yeah.
and is taking direct steps to address that.
Exactly. It's about empowering Black communities to have more control over their food sources and distribution networks, which is really getting at the heart of food justice.
It sounds like they're moving beyond just providing food and working towards creating a more equitable food system. What about the food charter you mentioned that is being updated?
Right.
What's the focus there?
Yeah, so the Toronto Food Charter is a really important document because it outlines the city's vision for a just and sustainable food system. And they're working on incorporating this food insecurity emergency declaration into the update.
What does that look like in practice? What kind of changes are we talking about?
Well, they're really emphasizing the importance of ensuring that everyone in Toronto has access to healthy, affordable, and culturally appropriate food. It's about recognizing that food is more than just sustenance. It's a part of cultural identity and community well-being.
Speaking of cultural appropriateness, I noticed that the City of Toronto is also taking steps to address food insecurity in Indigenous communities.
Yes, absolutely. The Reconciliation Action Plan includes commitments to support Indigenous food sovereignty. It aims to make it easier for Indigenous people to access and utilize traditional foods and medicines. It's about acknowledging and respecting Indigenous knowledge and practices around food.
Okay, so while the City of Toronto is certainly taking action, it's clear that this problem requires collaboration from all levels of government. What are they specifically asking of the provincial and federal governments?
Well, in their motion to the provincial government, they're really pushing for a universal school food program.
Can you expand on that? What would a universal school food program entail, and what are the potential benefits?
Well, just imagine a program where every single student in Toronto, regardless of their background or financial situation, has access to a nutritious meal at school every day. No more stigma, no more worrying about whether kids are coming to school hungry.
That would be amazing.
Yeah.
But is the provincial government actually willing to fund something like that? It seems like a pretty big undertaking.
Yeah, it would definitely require a significant financial investment, and that's something the City of Toronto is actively advocating for. They've made it clear to the province that they need more funding to make this universal program a reality.
Let's hope they listen. Now, what about the federal government? What role can they play in addressing food insecurity in Toronto?
Well, the City of Toronto is urging the federal government to step up in a big way when it comes to income support programs. They're specifically calling for programs like employment insurance, old age security, and the Canada Disability Benefit to be enhanced and indexed to inflation.
We talked in part one about how crucial this is for keeping pace with the rising cost of living. But have you seen any indication that the federal government is receptive to these demands?
It's hard to say for sure, it's still early days, but the fact that the city is publicly pushing for these changes and presenting them as essential for addressing food insecurity is a positive sign.
It sounds like it'll take a lot of sustained pressure and advocacy to ensure these demands are not only heard but acted upon.
Absolutely. The city's motion is a powerful starting point, but real change requires sustained effort from everyone. Residents, community organizations, and all levels of government working together towards the same goal.
It's interesting that you mentioned the need for a multi-pronged approach, because the City of Toronto also made some specific recommendations about how the federal government can address the high prevalence of disability among food bank clients.
Right. They're calling for improvements to the Ontario Disability Support Program, which is a provincial program, but they believe a stronger partnership with the federal government is needed to make it more effective.
I'm curious about their rationale for involving the federal government in a program that's managed at the provincial level. What's the thinking there?
It seems they believe that tackling the complex challenges faced by people living with disabilities requires a collaborative approach that goes beyond provincial boundaries. They're basically arguing that the federal government has a responsibility to ensure all Canadians, regardless of their province of residence, have adequate support.
Makes sense. What other recommendations did they make?
They're also pushing for the creation of a robust Canada Disability Benefit. This would be a new federal program specifically designed to support people with disabilities and lift them out of poverty.
So it's about recognizing that disability is a key factor driving food insecurity and taking concrete steps to address the unique challenges faced by people with disabilities. This aligns with their overall focus on income security as a long-term solution to food insecurity, right?
Exactly. If people with disabilities have reliable access to financial support, it can break the cycle of poverty and food insecurity. It gives them the resources they need to live with dignity and participate fully in society.
It's all connected. While these government actions are crucial, are there other approaches to addressing food insecurity that we haven't discussed yet?
We've focused a lot on the role of government, but it's important to remember that community organizations and grassroots initiatives also play a vital role in this fight.
That makes sense. These organizations are on the ground, working directly with communities and responding to their specific needs.
Right. And they often bring a unique perspective and approach that complements government initiatives. In part 3, we can explore the work of these organizations in more detail and discuss how individuals like you can contribute to creating a more just and equitable food system.
So we spent the last 2 parts of this deep dive really digging into food insecurity in Toronto, the alarming statistics, the systemic issues, and the City of Toronto's response. Now, I kind of want to shift our focus a bit. In part 2, we touched on the role community organizations and individuals can play. What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. While it's super important to advocate for those bigger policy changes and systemic solutions, grassroots efforts are essential too.
Okay, so let's talk more about that. What does food justice actually look like in practice?
Well, for me, it starts with recognizing that access to healthy and culturally appropriate food is a fundamental human right, not a privilege. Everyone deserves to nourish themselves and their families without having to choose between food and rent, you know?
Right, it's about making sure everyone can put food on the table, and not just any food, but food that is nutritious, culturally relevant, and affordable.
Exactly. But it goes even deeper than that. Food justice is about addressing the root causes of food insecurity, like poverty, systemic racism, and creating a society where everyone has access to things like affordable housing, healthcare, education, and decent work.
So it's about taking a step back and looking at the bigger picture.
Yeah, and it's about empowering communities to have a voice in shaping the food system, supporting community-led initiatives like urban farms, community gardens, and food co-ops that promote food sovereignty and build resilience.
We have some fantastic examples of those initiatives right here in Toronto. Food Share, Black Creek Community Farm, they're doing amazing work to increase food access, promote healthy eating, and empower communities.
They are, and those are just 2 examples among many. There's a whole network of organizations, groups, and individuals working tirelessly to create a more just and equitable food system in Toronto.
So inspiring. So beyond supporting these organizations, what can individuals listening to this do?
Well, it might sound simple, but one of the most powerful things you can do is educate yourself. Learn about food insecurity and food justice in your own community. Read articles, listen to podcasts like this one, attend workshops, follow organizations that are doing great work.
Knowledge is power.
Exactly. Once you understand the issue, you can start to see how to make a difference. And then think about how you can use your voice and your resources to support change. Like donating to a local food bank or community garden, volunteering your time, or advocating for policy changes.
Yeah, even small actions can make a difference. Writing to your elected officials, speaking up at community meetings, or sharing information with your networks.
And don't forget the power of your everyday choices. Supporting local farmers markets, choosing fair trade products, reducing food waste. These actions might seem small, but they contribute to a more sustainable and just food system.
It's about aligning your actions with your values.
Exactly. Food justice is not just about what we eat, but how we produce, distribute, and consume food. It's about creating a system that is fair, sustainable, and benefits everyone.
What a powerful vision. So as we wrap up this deep dive into food insecurity in Toronto, what's the one thing you want our listener to take away?
The situation is serious, there's no doubt about it. But I also want to emphasize that change is possible. The City of Toronto declaring food insecurity an emergency is huge, and the growing awareness and action around food justice is inspiring. It takes sustained effort and collaboration, but we can create a food system that truly works for everyone.
That's a hopeful note to end on. Even small actions can make a big difference when we work together. Thanks for listening. Thanks for listening today. 4 recurring narratives underlie every episode: boundary dissolution, adaptive complexity, embodied knowledge, and quantum-like uncertainty. These aren't just philosophical musings, but frameworks for understanding our modern world. We hope you continue exploring our other podcasts, responding to the content, and checking out our related articles at helioxpodcast.substack.com.